Then it goes to user flow. I then created a user flow to lay out the user's movement and map out possible steps through sequences of tasks and decision points in pursuit of goals. Okay, there look like there are different scenarios. Like the first scenario one is Kate wants to find the local piano tutor. Okay, and this is how to connect from the start to the successful point. There is also scenario two, Kate wants to ask the tutor more information, and then what are the other key steps involved? Is there some explanation? Okay, here you go. Legend. Start and end is labeled in, one question I had while browsing is what are the different shape, different color style of the box actually mean. And I just realized this designer actually has this introduction here, like the blue ones for start and end. The outline box are for Kate actions, the user's actions, and the gray box will be actually more for system screen. I think this is helpful definitely, but the way like how this presented maybe can have a bit even more better clarity, because when you group the legend sort of in the same row as the flow, it kind of blended in, and I had to like go back and try to look for it. Then I find where it is. When you show something in a portfolio view, it has to be self-explaining. Use any visual language you can, and try to separate things like more of context, background, or index, like the legend here. Try to separate it. I would try to separate it from the actual main flow you're trying to show here. Then we have wireframes. There's some lo-fi sketches. I always love it. I think it's super effective just working with pen and paper. Then there are some mid-fi wireframes. And we have some branding information here. So it looks like this designer has done some explorations on the brand logo. There's some fun sketches and UI kit, and there's some typography. Okay, so the designer looks like might also work on the design system. For example, the color system and typography. It's definitely helpful to show this, I think, but on the other hand, I'm not sure this is the best place. It feels like this is positioned more of a little bit feels interrupted, like from lo-fi, mid-fi, branding. And then after the branding, we go to prototype text. That's like the next step. So question mark, is this the best position if you want to show branding and visual design skills? Maybe you can consider other part of the story, like maybe towards the end might be another option. Then we have prototype and test. So mid-fi prototype will be the object of usability tasks conducted in the next phase. So the designer used mid-fi prototype and testing because she wants to assess the ease of use of the app and its functionality over aesthetic of the product. I see. So I think testing with mid-fi or low-fi is always a good idea because depends on what's the goal you're trying to find out. You don't necessarily need to put all the time and efforts and getting hi-fi ready and in order to do the research. So here in this case, if the goal is just to try to assess the ease of use of the app and it's like basic functionalities, the mid-fi might work. So then it talks more about the testing. The designer talks more detail about recruiting, completion rate, affinity map. Okay, what is this? Once the tests are done, all user thoughts were jotted down and synthesis into affinity map. Okay, this helps to point out a pattern of any hiccup okay, so this is probably the synthesis after this designer has done this part of the study to try to summarize the finding. And from there, I'm able to uncover insights and generate recommendations for iterations. Cool. This is like, I think really helpful in timing up, okay, how does this testing help me understand what do I need to do next? So from there, this designer was able to prioritize improvements and iterations based on the level of cost and impact of the revision. I think this is some analysis, basically, okay, from the insights learned from this testing, some might be high cost versus low cost, and some might be high impact versus low impact. And from there, this designer was able to decide on the next priorities and working on revisions. So from there, I made revisions for the most prioritized task, and then it goes into some before and after mid-fi screens. I think this is probably where I would love to understand more. like why you have changed certain things from before to after and why. Okay, there might be some details here. Let's see. Filter options will be varied based on what users type in the search bar. Okay, looks like the before and after are quite different. And this is where I think in real world, if I get to interview you, I will definitely ask you more about, okay, what's the sauce behind in terms of the changing certain things. For example, the hourly rate, year of experience on the left screen seems like gone on the right screen. So I definitely have some questions I'd love to understand more. Then it has more before and after, talking about what has changed. Rating bar is changed to user can filter minimum and maximum hourly rate. I see. So this designer is definitely trying to explain like what she has changed based on the testing. But I think what might be helpful here is besides the fact, like what you have changed, to also try to explain a bit of why. Here visually, I can roughly tell like from the left to the right, okay, the hourly rate progress bar has changed. And okay, so user can filter minimum and maximum hourly rate. I see. So this is somewhat, I think, trying to getting there, but it'll be even better if you try to, I think, besides what you have changed, and explain a bit of why, like you did that because of what, and how has that helped the users in their journey. So that can really tie your design iterations or revisions back to what is the goal of this product and what are some pain points you have found out from the testing. Another critic is, I get that you're trying to do testing and showcase before after based on MeetFi or lo-fi here on Wireframe, but still, visually, I think in terms of how you show the before and after and what are some call out, those can be visually interesting. Just because of the screen you're showing is lo-fi, MeetFi, or not hi-fi, it doesn't mean you can't use color or use something that has a bit more like visual focus to help guide the user. So the dotted line here, it's like somewhat feels a little bit too soft to me. Although this can be subjective, this might be just this personal opinion, but I think I would encourage you to try, if you have the time, like maybe play with and take a look how other designers show call out. Like you can play around dotted line or arrow point out. So, and you introduce color or call out with some frame or outline to make this like visually well balanced, and so you have a clear focus. Okay, when I look here, how do you want to guide my attention? Like if everything is presented black and white with the pretty much the same level of visual emphasis, it's very easy for viewers to lose their visual guidance on where should I look first. And that's kind of how I feel when I stop here. Like, do I want to look at the first screen or actually the text? It feels like a little bit on the same hierarchy. So that I think will be something can be helpful. Then it goes into hi-fi. So I updated hi-fi based on the UI kit and priority revision in previous part. Cool. So this is a nice combination, looks like, of the finalized hi-fi screens and final prototype. And it goes into, okay, final thoughts and next step. These are always nice to have. In terms of, I think, project-wise, when you go into hi-fi, this is the part, it feels a little bit, oh, that is it, that's all the story. It feels like you could probably expand it a bit more when you get to the hi-fi, because those are the finalized solution. And yes, process is very important, but also like what is the result and final outcome is definitely a highlight. And if you have done certain changes between MeetFi to hi-fi, what are those? And how you landed on certain decisions as the final screen? What are some reasons behind? So I feel like the hi-fi is the actual part. I would try to expand a bit more and explain your design thinkings. The other thing is the final prototype, same as what we have looked at before. Definitely, I think I'd highly recommend you, instead of having, or in addition to, have a link, try to show the prototype in this webpage. So very likely as a user, you won't lose that opportunity to showcase actually your final work, the final prototype. And if you only leave a link here, I think you really leave a lot of chance to the actual viewer, whether they decided to skip it or click on it. And also one other thing I think comes to final thoughts. Totally understand this is probably a case study, but one thing I always look for is how do you measure success? How do you know your design has successfully solved the problem you have defined at first or not? You have talked about business goals and user goals at the beginning, but at the end, it feels like I didn't see there's any data. There's some next step and thoughts, but if you have done testing, is there any data you can actually add towards the end to help the viewer understand what's the outcome, the design outcome? To be able to quantify and measure the success of design is actually, I think, a very important part, and also strategic thinking that designer needs to build up. Besides working on visual, working on screens and flows, I think it's also extremely helpful for UX designer to think about this upfront. Set up the matrix. What are the matrices do I want to look at? Like for a tutor map, like I'm just making this up, like matrix you can set are, for example, in the new in the actual like final version I have, I want users to be able to onboard within 2 minutes. Am I able to do it? And also engagement rate, engagement level, and how how often can users be actually successfully get connected with a mentor? You can set up different matrix, but communicate that upfront, and also towards the end of the project when you tell the story, how did your design successfully solve those problems? I think that's always helpful to make a story feels more complete, and also showcase your thinking of, again, back to the subject, like we're not only solving user problems, but also try to accomplish certain business goals. And how has your design done that? So I think that's all I have for the case study. And last, like we always do, let's take a look at the About page. Cool. Hello again. My name is Chloe Ho. I am a UX designer. My story. So there's a bit more details talking about this designer and her background, experience. There's also a link towards the end of View My Resume. I think this is always helpful. As I think a UX portfolio, when you get to this page, it's usually after I looked at your design, your case study, and chances are, next step, I want to know a bit more about you and potentially get in touch with you. So I think this design is very much serving this purpose. One little critique, this is really, I think, up to you. But yeah, I think About page, I think this is where you can put a bit more, like your personal interest or passion. I see this designer did more talking about, okay, besides design, I like hiking, cooking, gardening. This is always great. I think this is where if you want to add a bit more, whether it's photographs or illustrations, you can be a bit more, I think, telling your own story besides and in addition to your professional side of experience. And I also see, like, this is definitely, I think, optional. I see a lot of portfolios in this page that will show some pictures of yourself. But I think this illustration looks really nice, and I saw this also on your homepage, so it does feel consistent. But at the same time, I do feel like, I wish I know a bit more about you. So I don't know, just we'll leave it up to you if you want to include some pictures or some fun image, visual interest. This is where the About page is where the best place for you to do so. So overall, I think Chloe did a pretty good job as a new grad from Design Bootcamp. Overall, I think things I like is how visually clean it is from homepage to the case studies. It feels visually consistent. There are also a couple of other things as we mentioned when reviewing this portfolio is, for example, like how to create more visual interest when you present things like lo-fi, mid-fi, how to guide the visual hierarchy, like what are the information, what are the takeaways you want the hiring manager to remember after looking at your portfolio. And also when you get to hi-fi, it feels a little bit rushed towards the end of the case study. So that is actually, I think there are some opportunities for you to explain more about how you make certain design decisions and what are the thinkings behind. Another thing is, I think having a clickable prototype is definitely one of the key skills as UX designers. So I would try to show that as part of your website. Overall, I think Chloe did a really good job. So we'll have more fun stuff to come. And thank you again for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.